Hi, everyone. My name is Kim, and I'm the founder and creator of Expat Mama. Through these interviews that are both in the audio podcast as well as the new YouTube channel, we educate people about what it's like to be an expat, which is someone who's left their native country to live in another country, and we tell their stories. Today, my guest is Amy Scott, who says she's from all over the US, yet she's lived in several places in Latin America, which we want to hear about. We want to hear all the details. She's currently in Queretaro, Mexico. I'm so excited to interview her. Welcome, Amy. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. So can you just tell us a little bit about what your childhood, your whatever, you've lived all over the place. So I'll just let you start talking.
Yeah, so when I say I'm from all over the US, it's kind of a, just a short answer, so I don't have to explain all the moving around and stuff. But I mean, I wasn't like an army brat or anything. It wasn't that kind of moving around, but we did just happen to move a few times for my dad's work. And so I was born in Jersey, and we lived in Seattle, we lived in Denver, we moved back to New Jersey when I was in middle school. And so that's it really, but it was like, hopping all across the country and back. And then also I went to college on the East Coast, but then moved to California right after I graduated pretty much, and lived in California for just like 8 years all over California, and then ended up back on the East Coast. And so, yeah, I really have been kind of all over, and then have been living abroad since 2007.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So all of the moving around, I mean, people that are listening to this are from all over the world. I am one of those people who just moved all around the place, but not around the world, just around the United States as well. My dad first being military and then police, as that is a typical American thing. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is 10% of the American population is constantly moving at any given time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's typical. We kind of are unstable people and nomadic by nature if you grow up that way. Yeah. So let's hear a little bit about like how you got here, how you got to Querétaro. We're fast forwarding. You can fill in the blanks anytime you want.
Okay. So yeah, I ended up first, well, I'd taken a few trips internationally, both with my family and then also as a young adult, and then got this, quote unquote, crazy idea in my late 20s to quit my job and take a round the world trip.
Yay.
And that was really the first, that's what kickstarted everything, right? That's happened since. And that was almost 17 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So that was, a 9-month trip, solo trip. I spent time in South America, in Southeast Asia, in India, and stopped in England on my way home. So that was, I was like so on the move. I think the most time I spent in one place was like 10 nights. And that was because I was doing a meditation retreat, so you had to stay put. But the rest of the time it was like a few nights here, maybe max like 5 nights somewhere else. And so I just I wanted to see everything, of course. And also I felt like this is kind of getting an overview. I know I'm going to come back to a lot of these places. I didn't necessarily feel like I was looking for a place to live or anything like that. But by the time that trip was over and I was headed back to the States, I knew I didn't want it to be over, and I knew that it was really just the tip of the iceberg, right? And that by moving around so much, I really hadn't been able to really dive in to any one culture or to one experience to really get to know a place and the people and the language and all of that. And so that was what was the impetus then for the next phase, which was, okay, I'm going to hunker down in the States and, set myself up to be able to work from anywhere. And then I'm going to move somewhere abroad. And I had, kind of made my short list and narrowed it down from there, and ended up moving to Buenos Aires in 2007.
Mi corazón.
Yeah, I know. We found out that was something we had in common. That's so crazy.
We were down there at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, I lived in Argentina almost 18 years. So you moved down there, and how long were you down there? Let's talk about Argentina.
Yeah, when I first moved, I
Mhm.
thought, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, like we'll see how I like it and how this whole, freelancing from abroad goes and all of that.
Mhm.
And I fell in love with the city. I made some really good friends right off the bat. And next thing you know, it was 2 years later. And I was like, I could go anywhere. Like maybe it's time to go somewhere new. And then I met my husband.
Argentinian husband?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh, like
Yep. So I
me. Oh
met
my
him
gosh.
in
So many parallels.
2009.
Mhm.
Yeah. And, basically it was one of those like, well, I think maybe I'll stick around and see how this is going to go, and yeah, we were inseparable from day one, got married a couple years later. And then from the beginning, he had been very intrigued by, like, wait, you can work from anywhere? Like, what are you doing here? How did you get here? Like all of that. And he's like, oh,
Mhm.
that's what I want to do. And
Oh,
so shortly
cool.
after we got married, he quit his job, and he had been, kind of building up some side hustles at the same time. And he quit his job and we started traveling in 2012. And since then, it's been a real, again, gone through all kinds of different phases. Like we traveled full time for a while. We would go back to Argentina for, it's funny. I think the first time we were gone 6 months and we went back for 6 months. Then we were gone for 6 months and went back for like 4 months. And then we were gone and we came
Ah,
back for like 6 weeks. Like it kept getting shorter and
shorter,
shorter.
shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I actually haven't been back since 2015. Um, so yeah, we've been spending less and less time there. He's been back a few times more than I have to see family.
Mhm.
And we spent time in Southeast Asia and just kind of exploring different areas, and landed in Mexico for the first time. I think our very first trip here was 2014. And kind of the inverse of Argentina, like we started coming back and back for longer. Like the first trip was like
Mhm.
6 weeks. The second one was 4 months. The next one was 6 months. The next one was a year,
Trying to
And
find your place, figuring it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, we've been full time in Mexico now. I guess we're coming up on 5 years. Um, yeah. Since like we actually, committed to staying in one place for a while. We were in San Miguel de Allende full time for a year, and
Mhm.
then 3 years in Mexico City. And now we've been in Querétaro for almost a year.
So I would love to see, for example, kind of do a comparison, because we're in a good place where you've lived in 3 different countries or more. Or have there been more, or have you just traveled to other countries but not
Yeah,
really lived in them? The
right. Like
same
the
three
most I've
countries that I've
spent.
lived in.
Right,
So
exactly.
so
Yeah.
let's start opening up a little discussion about that, for example, about the differences in the cultures, for example.
Yeah.
Has he lived in the US?
No, just traveling
Okay,
with me. Yeah.
just traveling with you. Okay, so there's a huge cultural difference between Argentina and Mexico.
Mhm.
What have you and maybe even your husband observed, for example?
Yeah, I think, where do I even start?
Exactly.
Well, and partly what's funny too is that I basically haven't been back to Argentina since I've been in Mexico. And so I feel like my comparison, my juxtaposition isn't quite as fresh, as it would be if I was like going back and forth more regularly. So I had 5 years, in Buenos Aires, and now about 5 years here, but none of it has overlapped.
Right,
So
right. What
yeah,
does your husband say, for example? I know for a fact, and where's he from in Buenos Aires? So I can just kind of have an
just
idea.
outside the city, actually, like Gran Buenos Aires. Hmm.
Well,
South of the city.
that's where we live too, but where? I'm kind of
South
curious.
of Quilmes, near Quilmes.
Okay, so that would be the let me see. We were in Oeste, which is the west.
Yep.
So that would be northern.
No, he was south.
No, excuse me, south.
Yeah.
Quilmes is south. Okay,
Mhm.
so we were both living in the province. How crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, Quilmes. And we were living in Moron. I'm not sure if you knew that area.
I know the name, but I don't know if I've ever been there.
Ramos Mejia. It's the western part of the
Mhm.
province of Buenos Aires. Wow. So interesting. Okay. So one thing about a typical Argentine or one that's Porteño from Buenos Aires is they have a lot of opinions about every single thing. Am I not right?
Well, actually, it's funny you even say that because I don't know if my husband really would identify as
Maybe he's not
Porteño even.
typical. Maybe he's not
Yeah.
even typical. Okay.
And that too. Yeah. I don't think he identifies fully as Porteño, partly because he was outside the city. Also,
Right.
neither of his parents are from the city. His
Okay.
mother is from Rosario and his father is from Tucumán. And so,
Okay.
is very different than like a family that's been in,
To his credit,
downtown
by the way, to
Porteño.
his credit, because he's probably nicer and a little bit more humble.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
say that? Is it safe to say that the typical person from Buenos Aires is far from that?
Yeah.
I know, because I married one. So much fun, but humility isn't one of their better traits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what kinds of differences do you find, like culturally speaking? I mean, here in Mexico, both countries have a strong family culture.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you guys drink mate?
Yep.
Love it.
Yep.
It sounds like I'm going to have to make a trip up to Queretaro just to drink some mate.
Yeah.
Well, probably we better let the pandemic swing by first. But okay, so mate, just for our listeners, probably don't have any idea what that is, or very little. It's spelled like mate, M-A-T-E. It is the most typical Argentinian item of culture that you can possibly, help me out here, that we can possibly link to Argentinian culture. It is a hot drink that's made with herbs. And it's actually very good for you. It's a great stimulant. It's not like caffeine. It's a natural substance, and it's a great diuretic too. Has some excellent health benefits to it.
Mhm.
What else? What do you preserve that maybe the two of you have brought from Argentina to your lives as a couple and as a family, maybe?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we missed a lot when we first came to Mexico was, a great tie-in with the mate discussion is, we spent a lot of time, while we were dating and beyond at the park drinking mate, like
Love
put a
it.
blanket out and, with friends or by ourselves. That's such a typical thing to do, right? Like on a Sunday afternoon or even during the week.
Totally.
And we lived really close to a big park, our last place there. And, a lot of, and it's funny because obviously Buenos Aires is part of Latin America, but a lot of, especially smaller towns in Latin America, and especially, maybe not especially Mexico, but certainly in places we've been in Mexico, there aren't parks with like grass, right? It's like plaza more with like lots of concrete and, lovely little like ornamental, landscaping, but there's no like just a nice spread of grass.
Just spread of grass, sit on a blanket and sit on some grass, right?
Exactly. And that was something we missed for sure, because that was a big part of, just how we relaxed and enjoyed, the city. And it was one of the things that we did probably more often than anything else when we lived in Argentina.
And it didn't cost any money. And what is the significance of drinking mate that you understand?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it is, just sharing it with people. And in fact, it's funny because even before I met my husband, I drank it at home by myself. It was like, I'd be working at home and would always make myself mate. And people certainly do drink it by themselves, but that's not really the way you're, supposed to do it. It's definitely something to be shared, and
it's have against the rules to drink alone.
Right. So you've got your one, gourd and your one straw, and everyone shares. And speaking of waiting until the pandemic is over, I don't even know. I guess that communal mate is not really a thing right now.
Which seems anti-Argentine.
Right.
Yeah. But it's necessary right now because I always talk with people from Argentina, and I wonder if one of the reasons, okay, let me get more into detail about how you drink mate. So it's not just, you have a metal straw, it has a filter in it, and you drink it out of there, and then you pass it on to the next person. And I know some people are watching this thinking, what? Their eyes are probably, but that's what it is. It's about sharing. It's about union. It's about togetherness and sharing, it brings people together. It's a way to accompany people, and it doesn't cost that much money. And it really is the most Argentinian thing that there is. So here we've got, going from person to person. I can only imagine that has propagated a lot of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now they've had to necessarily change the protocol. I'm wondering how that's happened, or everybody has their own mate now. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be.
It just seems so strange. It would be strange to be living something like that.
For sure. In fact, it makes me wonder. I was just reading something, and there've been lots of mentions about all the different ways, some of which we have no idea about yet, that life is just going to be different from now on. Things have changed, practices have changed in a lot of different ways. Makes me wonder if this could lead to some kind of, cultural shift in how they do mate there. I don't know.
For sure.
It's kind of hard to believe that and it feels like it's such a strong tradition. It would take a lot
tradition
to shift it, right? But who knows? It could be a thing that people are like, I'm not sharing with you anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, and mate isn't just drunk in Argentina. It's also Uruguay, part of Brazil. I don't know what other countries, Paraguay too. So yeah, so there's quite a few countries that are participating in this very strong tradition. So interesting. Now, what about your family life? How do you integrate the cultures? How do you merge those? What does your home look like as far as traditions go?
Well, we're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
We've been together for more than 10 years, but I think neither of us felt particularly attached to certain traditions. Like I would say, like when we were moving around, we just kind of would go with the flow, like we were in Bali for Christmas one year. Like, well, when in Bali, let's just do whatever, it wasn't like we were attached to celebrating holidays in a certain way, or, and there were times for example, we didn't have access to mate. So we just stopped drinking mate for a while,
Yeah, of course.
And now we have kids. We have 2.5-year-old toddlers, twins.
Oh.
And so we're really at that point of like, what do we want our life as a family to look like? What do we want them to learn about, how we grew up with certain traditions we want to create new for ourselves as a family? And, like we just had Christmas, and even it was like, wait, what do we do here?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how do we want to, how do we want to introduce Christmas to them? Because this was really the first year that they had a sense of anything going on, like we were pretty lax about it last year. They were about 1.5 years last year, and we were like, they don't really know, it's fine. And we just, didn't worry about it. And then this year we were like, oh wait, I think we need to figure out what we're doing. So yeah, it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, being now in a third country that obviously has its own traditions and culture and history that we're still learning ourselves. And so it's interesting thinking like, okay, how do all these things come together, and I mean, partly it will depend on how long we stay here, and if they end up, going to school here or things like that will obviously influence what they learn and what they take in from Mexican culture. But we're still figuring it out.
Yeah, and you've got really young kids.
Yeah.
So what about Spanish and English? What's going on in your home there as far as that goes?
It's a beautiful Spanglish mix. Generally, it's funny because when my husband and I first met, his English was not very strong and he didn't feel very comfortable speaking. So we were speaking like 99% Spanish when we met. And then, as our relationship progressed, he wanted to be able to communicate better with my parents. And then we were going to be traveling. And so, we slowly started to shift more to English to, help him practice.
Right.
And now I think I'm just lazy and we speak like 99% English between the two of us. But he speaks Spanish to the kids and I speak English.
There you go. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. And they are, it's hilarious actually. Obviously they're mixing languages in sentences. Today we put them down for a nap, but we have the monitor on so we can hear them in their room, and they're sharing a room and they're like running around and they're being crazy. And I hear like, come on, vamos. Like they're totally, even to each other. It's like, I'm like, wait, so yeah, obviously I'm actually surprised how much I expected this to happen much later, but they are very clear about some things. Like mommy says this, daddy says this.
Yeah. Kids distinguish that really early on.
It's amazing to me, amazing. And so then I'm curious, and that's why it's great to be able to hear them when they're alone. So I'm like, well, what language do they speak to each other? Because neither mom or dad is there to facilitate one or the other. It's a real mix. And so it's been one of my favorite things really about having kids, is just watching their language development. And like I said, the things that they've been able to distinguish already. Like, I can't even think of an example right now, but like they'll say something to me and then they'll say daddy and then say the Spanish word. Like they know, like, oh, that's daddy's word. This is mama's word.
Like mom wouldn't understand anything if you talk to her in Spanish. She only understands English.
Well, I wonder.
Who knows what they're thinking,
Right. Because then like obviously we go out to a restaurant or something and I speak Spanish to people.
Yeah.
Or we go to the park, In fact, that's sometimes really interesting because like if I'm with them at the park, I'm talking to, like we encounter someone with the dog. Of course, they get super excited to see a dog. So we go over to talk and I'm, obviously talking to the person in Spanish, but then I turn and talk to like my daughter in English. Like, it's okay. Do you want to touch the puppy? And then the woman is speaking to her in Spanish. And then they think like, oh, maybe the daughter doesn't speak Spanish. I'm like, no, she speaks Spanish. It's fine. So yeah. And then the other day, a woman actually asked her a question and she goes, yeah. And she goes, see?
Like,
and
what
then,
do I do?
yeah. And then we were walking away and she's like, adios. So yeah, it's really sweet seeing them interact and just like, just figure it all out.
So you've got the two twins and then you've got a daughter who's older?
No.
No.
The twins, it's a boy and a girl.
Oh,
so
perfect.
The daughter is one of the twins.
La parejita, as you would say in Spanish, the mixed couple. Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess I had a few more questions too. So like, what does your husband say about Mexico? What are his observations that he's expressed to you? Is he happy to be in Mexico?
Generally, yes. And
yes.
He has no interest in moving back to Argentina.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And, obviously we miss his family there, but other than that, yeah. So yes, I think generally, he's happy with our life here. It feels, safer and more secure and just better.
Let's talk a little bit about safety. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people that will listen from the north will say, oh, Mexico's full of drugs, it's full of cartel, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, right.
Has that been your experience here?
Not at all. I mean,
not at all, not mine either.
And I will say there have been a few times that we've felt like we needed to, what's the word, like alter our behavior and our movements a little bit. Like there's a road. Well, as you may know, southern Guanajuato has gotten a little
Yes, I
sketchy with
have heard about
cartel
that.
activity.
Yes, yes, yes.
And that's fairly close to us. And it's interesting because Queretaro is considered very safe. The
Mhm.
police here are considered, you know, more honest than a lot of areas of Mexico. But it's like, it's not that far away that there's some things happening. And like there's a town in Guanajuato called Celaya that,
Yeah.
you know, has been having a rough time. And sometimes like there's a road, what's called Salida Celaya, but I don't think we would actually need to take it all the way to Celaya. But even just seeing that on a sign, you get a little bit like, is it okay for us to drive on this road? You know, because we don't know how close we're getting to any potential
Mhm.
sketchy area.
Right.
And then there was one time when we were living in Mexico City that an area that we drove through pretty often, there was a shooting, and actually an American, I think she was just visiting, I don't even think she lived there, was caught in the crossfire at a restaurant, you know?
Happened to be in the wrong place. Okay.
Right. So, you know, things certainly do
Boy,
happen,
yeah, yeah.
obviously, but I mean, obviously things happen in the US too. But yeah, there's lots of areas of Mexico that are very safe. I've certainly never felt personally, you know, in danger, or, you know, like I said, there's just sometimes that's like, oh, okay, maybe we won't go, you know, driving that to that, you know, on that highway or
Mhm.
something. But yeah, we have not had any bad experiences in Mexico, and we feel really good here.
I echo that sentiment. Let's talk about safety in Argentina.
Yeah. Well, right, because people who hear me say that
Mhm.
they probably don't think at all of Argentina as a place that's not safe. And, you know, again, it depends where you are and who you
Yeah.
know. And, but my husband, I mean, he was mugged going home, like from the bus to his family's house, you know, even before I met him, that was many years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
And the area where his family lives is just getting worse and worse.
Yeah. Especially in the
and
province. Yes. Mhm.
Right. And I think a lot of places, and honestly, I did a lot of stupid stuff in Buenos Aires when I was, you know, single, and the nightlife is so late. Like I'd be like
Yeah.
out, I'd be waiting for the bus by myself at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Like,
Uh-huh.
but nothing ever happened to me. And I
Right.
know I only think I had one situation where I'm like, maybe this is a bad idea, you know, but yeah. And so,
Yeah.
but what I think is happening there, and unfortunately is happening in a lot of places, is just that there is such a huge, what's the word? Like such inequality in,
Yeah.
you know, financial inequality, and
Yeah.
people who are just in really dire straits and are just, you know, desperate and do desperate things.
Yeah.
And I think that's
In,
a lot
in,
of
in
it.
my in-laws case, because I still have in-laws down there in Argentina, they were recently, this was less than a month ago, they went away for 2 hours out in their car, came back to an empty home.
Oh no.
This happened in December. Okay. So yeah, it's things like that are very common. The only time I've ever been robbed was in Argentina. I didn't even know I'd been robbed. I was on a train. A train in the province is not a safe way to travel. You would know that very well. All of a sudden I just felt like somebody touched me, and I had a gold chain on, which was probably my fault. I shouldn't have worn a gold chain, but it was sentimental. It's something my husband had given me. You know, the half heart thing, the media medalla thing, and the charm fell down, and they stole the chain. But they were so good at what they did. I didn't even know what had happened. However, a few years back, you know, I lived in Argentina for almost 18 years. The second time was 16 years straight. During the biggest crisis, Argentina lives from crisis to crisis.
Yeah, it's hard to say which is the biggest. Yeah.
One of the major crises, which was the same year we had 9/11, 2001. I forgot what I was going to say here. Oh, I was teaching English, and I still teach English. So, but back then there were some I didn't know any of my students who hadn't either been mugged, hijacked, carjacked, or something, you know, something had happened to every single one of them. And in fact, when I hadn't been down in Argentina as a newlywed that long, and I was supposed to go and teach a group class, and my student was supposed to come pick me up, and then we'd go to the house where I was going to teach English. Well, he never showed up, and I thought well, that's really strange. Felipe didn't come to pick me up. And then he calls me back and he says, you know what happened that night? He says, I went to go there, and I was kidnapped, you know, carjacked or whatever. They took my car. They left me in the middle of a villa. You know what a villa is? In the slums.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you weren't with me, because that would have been a situation that turned from bad to worse. And I'm like, thank you, guardian angel, and I have a million of them. And then, you know, my Argentine husband got assaulted once. I mean, and there was a time we were being followed by gypsies, and I realized what was going on. It seems like I was a little more street smart than my own Argentine husband. And we just, you know, I just grabbed him and put him into a how do you say tienda? I want to say tienda. Now I can't even think what it's called, like local, which is a local, like a kiosk, but maybe like a local business where they're selling clothes in Once. You know, that's not the best neighborhood in Buenos Aires, kind of a sketchy neighborhood. So anyway, things like that, but you always had to be looking out. I just remember feeling like I was hyper vigilant the whole 16 years I lived there. Whereas here in Mexico, I don't feel the same at all, not at all. It's a whole, you can just really relax here. Yes, you have to be street smart. You need to, you need to not let down your guard, but it's not the same hyper vigilance that you would feel like in Argentina. And in Argentina, nobody really knows about it. It seems like what's really going on down there. There are some pretty critical situations happening on a regular basis, and it is getting bad. I'm trying to convince my in-laws to move to Mexico, actually, because you know, I don't want to live in the U.S. I don't want them to have to go through that. Right now isn't a good time to go to the U.S., but Mexico, you know, they wouldn't have to struggle so much with the language.
Yeah.
And I know many Argentines that have moved to Mexico have absolutely thrived.
Yeah.
As we're thriving, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, well, so let's talk about Mexican culture as a whole. Are you happy here? Would you? And why?
I am. And you know, it's funny. I feel like I'm, even after all these years, I think I feel a bit more removed from the culture here. Because we're both outsiders. You know, it was very different in Argentina, where like I had other Argentine friends also, but then obviously dating a local, marrying a local, you really get immersed in a different way, right?
Totally.
And here in Mexico, I think partly because of the places that we've been also, we've had kind of a hard time really getting to know Mexicans. You know, I know a few now.
That's me. My Spanish is getting worse by the day.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
Because of all the expat influence, that's who we mostly hang out with. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. In Mexico City, one of the Mexicans I got to know the best was actually from Merida. And it kind of hit me that the reason, well, and you know, one of my other best friends there was Brazilian who'd lived in Spain for a long time. Another was from Paraguay. Another was from Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
So it's interesting that it wasn't necessarily Americans, but a lot of foreigners. And I was struck by and then, you know, this woman from Merida, it struck me that it makes sense that people who don't have the family structure, especially like these were all mom friends, you know, people I met when I was pregnant and then once the kids were born, and people who didn't have the family structure that, as we talked about, is so important and so central to a lot of Mexicans' lives, that I think there's a lot of turning kind of inward toward your family. But, and, you know,
Yes.
that's where you go for the family support. That's, you know, like, you know, your mother-in-law watches the kids and, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And when you don't have that, then you're looking for that, you know, kind of chosen family that can support you in the same way. And so I realized, oh yeah, it makes sense, you know, that like we're not meeting um a lot of Mexicans because they're not looking for that. They have their family structure, they have their friend structure already, unless they're people who've lived outside the country or came from another part of the country. I think
Mhm.
they're not necessarily looking for that. And so that's actually made me feel a little bit better about it, you know, and like, okay, it's not my
Yeah.
fault, you know,
It's not
like,
like they're, you know, trying to exclude you. It's just that and they have huge families. I mean, we're talking, I mean, I've never seen a people that have such a network of people that they know as Mexicans.
yeah,
I've never seen such a hardworking people as
yeah,
Mexicans. Those two things. So it's hard to get together with them, first of all, because all they do is work. You know, I work a lot, but nothing like a Mexican, believe me. They work a lot and for nothing, really. I mean, just really couldn't live on what they get paid. But they're busy. They're super, super busy. And then maybe the only day off, they work 6 days a week. And then the only day they have off is Sunday. And what is the most family day? It's Sunday.
yeah,
That's when the Malecon, which is the waterfront here in Mexico, fills up with people. The parks fill up with people, with family picnics, all kinds of gatherings that are going on.
yeah,
Because, and it's not unusual for a typical Mexican to have 250 family contacts. The weddings are huge.
yeah, yeah,
Any gathering they have, whether it be a quinceañera, wedding, and the funerals. That's another thing altogether. And those things can last for a couple of days. And then, yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
those are
I'm
quite
really
interesting.
struck by, you know, even just like kind of everyday events and gatherings. Like, yeah, you'll see big groups of people, you know, at
Mhm.
a restaurant or at the park, or, you know, like they really congregate in big groups,
Yes, they do.
which has also been challenging with the pandemic, right? Like there have been a lot of restrictions, obviously, on gatherings and
Mhm.
like how many people can go into a place together. And I think it's really put a cramp in people's socializing and connecting with people.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but I will say I'm very pleased with, I feel like there's just a sense of like we're all in this together, that I get the impression is not the case in a lot of places. But
Nope.
like people are still, I'd say like 95% of people are still wearing masks, you know, and
Mhm.
it's just very like, and now, you know, most of the country is in green. You know, they made like a stoplight system here in Mexico to, as you know, to
Mhm.
organize, you know, kind of where we're at in terms of how bad things are. So most of us are in green now, but a lot of the same restrictions are in place. And I've seen people talking about this in Facebook groups, like, you know, still masks, still whatever rules to keep us
Mhm.
in green. And
Oh,
there's this
yes,
sense of like, we
absolutely.
can't drop the
Mhm.
ball now, or we're going to go right back where we were. And
Right.
I really appreciate that, you know, awareness of
Mhm.
like, things are going pretty well, but we can't screw it up. Like it won't keep going well unless, you
Mhm.
know, we keep it up. So I've really been happy to see that.
Yeah, I coincide that way. At the beginning, there was quite a bit of resistance to put on masks. Now, I don't know if your area is the same as ours. You have to wear masks pretty much if you go into a place. The exception being a restaurant. Once you get in there, you can take off your masks. I don't know if it's the same in your area.
Yeah, it's the same here. Like
Okay,
if you're walking around in the restaurant, like if you go to the bathroom, you have to put your mask back on. But if you're sitting at
correct.
your table, it's fine. I had assumed that it wasn't required in parks anymore, just because I didn't see as many people wearing them at the park. But I recently actually went and read all of the, green status rules, and they are still required at parks. Just some people aren't wearing them, but
I never see anybody
yeah.
with masks except the people that are maybe selling things inside the parks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went downtown last weekend, to see the Christmas decorations and just walk around a little bit. And yeah, like I said, I think like 95% of people, walking around outside, walking around in the, in a bunch of the hardiness downtown and stuff. People were still wearing masks, even though maybe in those locations it's not technically required. I'm not sure.
Now, I think it was you did you post some beautiful pictures on Facebook about Querétaro? I don't know if it was you or some videos, but I saw some that it was fully decked out. I mean, what a beautiful city at Christmas.
Yeah, it was really nice. I was glad we got a chance to get down there. And, the kids' first time seeing some major Christmas decorations and stuff. So that was fun.
What's it like there in Querétaro? What kind of city is it?
It feels like a real balance between like the benefits of a small town and the benefits of a, good sized city also. I think the population, I've lost track. I think it's around 1 million-ish, which is, that's certainly a good sized city, but obviously coming from Mexico City, which is like 20 or 22 million, 1 million feels pretty small.
It's just a neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, and if you're downtown, the center is very well preserved and beautiful colonial buildings and churches and, so you can have that kind of feel if you're downtown. And then, there's other areas with like modern office parks and condos and, Walmart and, Costco and like all the, all the trappings of that kind of development. In fact, that's something that's an interesting difference too between Argentina and here, is that for a lot of different reasons, it was not that easy for foreign stores and businesses, companies to have a presence in Argentina. In fact, in the time I was there, some of them left because things got even worse.
So many left.
So and so now it's crazy how many American chains are here. Not just like obvious ones like McDonald's and Starbucks, but like, like I said, Walmart, Costco, Chili's, Home Depot, like, it's crazy how many of those there are here.
Chili's, Applebee's,
Domino's.
Yeah, Dominos. That's about the only American thing we have in this area. We have nothing. Oh, we have Walmart. Okay.
Yeah.
And then next to Walmart is Domino's Pizza. And that's it in this area. There's no fast food at all, which I like. I like not having, but it's nice to have that. And let's maybe shed a little bit of light on, okay, we're both Americans, but when you go to live in a foreign country, I have found with my two sons, they're now 25 and 15. My older one is out on his own, but they were still both with me. It was every time they'd see like anything American, anything familiar, I should say, they would just get all elated. They were so excited. What I do remember being down in Argentina is being so isolated. I was like the resident foreigner. And maybe you felt the same way in Quilmes. Like,
I never lived there.
Oh, you never lived there? Okay. Okay. So in my area, it was like I was the foreigner or one of the few handfuls of foreigners. The resident American, everyone knew me. Mini celebrity. I didn't not try to be one, but there weren't a lot of people that looked like me. I could never pass for an Argentine ever with these eyes and how big I am. I'm 5'10". I mean, as Swedish roots, I'm not going to pass for an Argentine ever. And so, but what the whole point I'm trying to get to is I remember just feeling so isolated and so like, I really don't feel like an American anymore. So many years had gone by, but yeah, I don't fit into this culture either. And so I think I've done things better than what was the way I did things, or my circumstances I had to live with my boys, because now we're in an area that I think has kind of the best of in the world, the best of both worlds, because they're able to get a little bit of what's familiar to them. And I think it's important because it grounds you to some degree. In Argentina, I lost my whole reference point. I did not have a choice. I did not have American friends near me. The closest friend was 2 hours away. It wasn't feasible for us to get together that often.
Yeah.
You know, and their lives were very different than mine because they had a car. I didn't have a car for 16 years living down there. It was a very different and very isolated life that I would not recommend. Okay, so now, I mean, we still don't have a car. We'll probably get a car. But I always try to like, okay, how about my son's begging me for Domino's pizza? Let's go get some Domino's. And that just kind of makes him feel like I'm eating something familiar, that I haven't just gone straight into the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people who will just come say, you're completely wrong. Oh yeah, of course, you're two gringas, you know, what are you gonna say? But put it the other way around. If you're from one country, you're gonna miss, an Argentine is gonna miss his mate. He's gonna miss his dulce de leche, his empanadas, his beef that is out of this world. Things like that just make him feel, help me out here with
I totally relate to that. In fact, it reminds me of, you know, the first experience I think I really had with that was on my round the world trip. And every once in a while I would come across you know, like a little stand, or even, well, like in Thailand, 7-Eleven is like the biggest thing. And obviously
Oh,
they
wow.
have different products there, but there's
Yeah.
like a 7-Eleven on every corner in Bangkok. It's crazy. But anyway,
Hmm.
so it wasn't like that 7-Eleven caught my attention per se, but every once in a while I would happen upon a place where I could get like a Snickers. I would never eat a Snickers in the US, but I'm like, oh, I know what that's going to taste like, right? Which is exactly what you're talking about. Like I wanted something that tasted familiar, because it's funny because there are a lot of international brands that don't taste the same. Like they have Cheetos here, but they do not taste the same. They have, you know, like some sodas don't taste the same depending on where you are.
True.
Like
it's true.
so it's interesting when you find something that tastes, actually, where were we recently? I can't remember where we were, but I said to my husband, now I understand the appeal of chains, because you know what you're going to get and like, you know what to expect.
Right.
And I think it was when we were downtown that night that we actually stayed overnight when we went downtown to see the Christmas decorations, and we were having trouble like finding a place to eat. And there were a couple places that the names were familiar, not like they were Mexican chains, but it was this feeling of like, oh, I think I get it. Like, oh, now I understand like why people would seek out a McDonald's while they're on vacation or whatever. It's like, well, at least I know what I'm going to get. Although, of course, even McDonald's can have different products and taste different in different countries. But
Totally.
it is a really interesting thing to feel like you want that familiarity sometimes. And I totally get that. And I think that what I hope is that, you know, people living abroad are able to find like a balance between the two, you know, like if you won't eat anywhere but McDonald's, like I think that's a shame, you know.
And like
but I get
exactly,
it if you
there's
want
something
it.
wrong there if you won't eat anywhere. What are you doing in a foreign country if all you want to do is go to McDonald's? That's the other extreme though.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's certainly, you know, room for all of it, you know, like, in fact, I hadn't been to McDonald's in years, and I went while I was in Argentina because people talked about, oh, it's actually a lot better here because the beef is better.
Oh yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, and it actually can be interesting, like I said, to see what products are different, at like even here, like, there's Starbucks here, but they have some different things on the menu than they sell in the US.
Mhm, mhm.
So those are also interesting cultural differences. Um, but yeah, I think it's really important also, of course, to get to know the food and and just experience where you are as well. So it's an interesting balance. Yeah.
Most definitely. And you mentioned Merida. We lived in Merida for a time too. We lived there
Oh,
for about 6 months. And we were within walking distance of Costco and Chili's. And it's honestly, my sons and I had a hard time adapting. First of all, it was too hot there, as the whole world knows that is like,
that's why
it's
I
gotta
haven't
be like
been.
the world's hottest city. Culturally, we really had a hard time making friends there.
Mm.
But the third, that was the final deal breaker for us, was that we could not adapt to the local food. And we consider ourselves fairly adaptable. But you can't be just calling Chili's all the time and going to Costco just because it's close. In the end, we ended up moving, leaving Merida. We gave it our best shot. We couldn't adapt. Ended up over here, Central Mexico. We're both in Central Mexico. Let's talk about what Central Mexico is like, starting with the weather. It's probably very different. Our listeners our viewers might be surprised to know that Mexico is not all beaches and tourism in
Yeah,
Mexico City.
exactly. I think a lot of people, when, if they just hear that I live in Mexico, they immediately assume I'm close to the beach, and I am
Exactly.
nowhere near the beach.
Nope.
So yeah, where we are is very dry. It's quite temperate. I think I'm not an expert, but my guess is that they would call this like semi-arid. Like it's quite desert-like. Right now in December, it can be like in the 40s Fahrenheit, in the
Oh, it is quite a
6,
bit
7 o'clock
colder
in the
than
morning.
here. Okay.
Yeah. First thing in the morning, it's quite chilly. But as soon as the sun comes up, it warms up super fast.
Yeah.
In fact, Christmas Day was like 80. That was the hottest day we've had in a while. It's been like kind of low to mid 70s. And then Christmas, it was like noticeably, sunny and 80.
Nice.
So yeah, it's dry season. And so, yeah, it's like pretty much sunny and 70s all the way through until usually like April-ish. It really starts to, you start to see the temperatures climb some more and it gets really hot. Kind of building and building until suddenly rainy season starts, and then everything kind of.
And when does rainy
bit.
season hit is it mid-June in your area too?
Usually,
Okay.
yeah, June-ish.
I was so surprised the first year we came here, and we were I think we weren't completely settled down, but we were doing some house sitting, pet sitting, and just exploring the area. And my boys were like, "Mom, I want to stop traveling." We had been traveling way too much, which is a good and bad thing. And they came here and they're like, we really like it here. And then I started asking questions, and they said, okay, so we arrived at the end of April, and right in the middle of when it was starting to kind of get hot. And really the summer, as you can call it, the hot season, let's just call it the hot season, the end of the dry season is April through the mid-June. They said, okay, well, what's going to happen here is now the rainy season is going to hit mid-June, around June 15th. Would you believe? Rainy season arrived on June 15th. And I'm like, we're living in the land of Camelot here. And it would rain at night. Tell me if it's similar where you live. It would rain at night, and pretty much all the rains would stop at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you have a sunny day, and then it starts raining again at night. I mean, what better weather than this?
Yeah. Here it's been no, so we've only been here through one rainy season, but I actually had assumed the weather was going to be pretty much the same as Mexico City, and it is a little different. Mexico City during rainy season, between like 5 and 7 p.m. every night, it would it was like downpour. It would rain
Oh.
so hard. But yeah, that was like the only time of day it would ever rain. Like if it rained in the middle of the day, it was like such a crazy fluke. You were like, what's going on here? And here, it's not as predictable. It
Okay.
doesn't rain every day. It doesn't rain at the same time. So it's a little bit, you know, it's a little harder to plan because,
Yeah.
because you don't know if you're going to hit and be hit, you know, with some crazy downpour or not. And well, similar to Mexico City and a lot of other places in Mexico, I think flooding can be really bad if there's a significant amount of rain, you know, in a short period of time. And so I actually get kind of nervous about getting, like, say I'm half an hour from home in the middle of a big storm, like the drive home is not going to be fun. And so, you know, and of course the pandemic helps a lot. We don't go out that much anyway. So, you know, we just basically didn't go out in the rain. But a
So
lot of
Mexico
times,
City,
we'd have
excuse me,
sunny days.
Mexico City, this would be every day. It would rain from like 5 to 7 and just pour down. Yeah, we went to Mexico. That was the first place we landed. Oh my goodness. We landed and we had to take a taxi to our Airbnb. I've never seen such a storm. It was like a whiteout. It was like this blizzard in August. I've never seen anything like it. Hailstorm. Thought the world was
We had
gonna end.
hail. Yeah, we had hail a number of times while we were there.
It's
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, it was crazy. In fact, I remember after we had moved there, I read somewhere that Mexico City actually gets more rain than London.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's just more condensed. You know, it's
Yeah.
like not all over the course of the whole year, obviously, and there's a lot of sun there as well. But those downpours are so consistent and so intense that, yeah, the total rainfall is actually more than London.
And that hits you right in rush hour.
Yes. There was a period my husband was working in an
I
office.
just can't even imagine.
My husband was working in an office for a while and he was walking to work because, you know, we didn't have a car and we lived close enough to where he was working. And there were times he would send me a message at 7 because he actually had to work until 7. He would send me a message at 7. He's like, I'm waiting until the rain stops. Like it was raining so hard right now. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Crazy. I'm actually impressed that he tolerated. I mean, it was terrible. Every single day he was walking home in the rain.
Oh my goodness.
I've been like, I can't do this anymore.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, and now my mind is going to work, since you've mentioned work. What do you guys do?
So that's been an interesting mix also. My main thing since, as I said, after my round the world trip, I went home to kind of regroup and figure out how I could work from anywhere. And my background was in book publishing. And so I basically emailed everybody I knew and said, okay, now I'm going freelance. If you need a copy editor or proofreader, contact me. And that was 16 years ago. So that's been my main thing ever since. And that's, you know, enabled me obviously to be anywhere. And I've worked with, started out kind of working with my former, you know, colleagues and working directly with publishing companies, and then also worked with a lot of independent authors as self-publishing has been taking off, and have also done work with a lot of organizations. And then I started Nomadtopia 10 years ago. That's my podcast, online community, coaching and courses and all of this stuff for nomads and expats. And then my husband, his background was in IT. That's what he studied, and he was working as a consultant when we met. And he was able to take kind of his, you know, both his tech skills and knowledge, and he's also really creative. He had taken some graphic design courses. So he has done a little bit of all of that stuff and did a lot of like tech support for online business owners and freelancers. So he's, you know, does like WordPress support and, you know, has designed logos and websites and, you know, a little bit of everything. So that was the main work he was doing while we were traveling. And then he worked as a consultant for a while in Mexico City. Part of that was on site. And then thanks to the pandemic, he's now doing the same work, but doing it remotely. So yeah, that, and he's still doing a lot of his, freelance tech and graphic design stuff as well.
Which he can do from anywhere, from home. So hey, why brave those crazy rains? Well, now you're in Queretaro, so it's a different climate. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. So now we're both working at home, and just kind of take turns working and watching the kids. And just try to hold down the fort as best we can.
You have a true partner in him, because he's there with you, and oh, that's nice. That's nice. So it's not all on you. Yeah.
Well, there's no way I could do all the work that I do.
We're twins.
Yeah, exactly. So, and normally we would probably be sending them, to daycare or preschool by this point, but because of the pandemic, we've decided not to. And so, it's just us. So we hang out at home a lot, and just, one of them is with the kids and one of us is working, and
you make it work.
Yeah.
That sounds ideal, actually. Yeah. A lot of people have found themselves in that situation too, or they're killing each other at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Killing each other and the kids.
Yeah.
Is there anything I haven't mentioned that you would like to bring into this interview?
Let's see. Well, I think, I would like to just touch a little bit on healthcare and stuff. And particularly it comes up in terms of like giving birth in another country. And I think about how, we've talked about some of the other ways that there are a lot of assumptions about what it's like in other countries. And there were a number of people in the US, like friends of my parents, relatives, friends of mine, who, when they found out I was pregnant, were like, well, I mean, she's coming back here, right?
Surely.
For the birth. Surely you would never give birth in another country. Like, if you can go to the US, you're going to do that, right? And I think there's a lot of assumptions that the level of care just is not up to par, and that, you're just in bad shape. And in fact, my parents, I think, they weren't the ones saying that. They were just relaying what they were hearing from other people. They were more, more supportive and open to it. But my mom did say, she came down to visit us while I was pregnant. And, like we did some, like, we went to this baby expo, like went to kind of look at some baby stuff. And then she was able to come with me to one of my OB appointments. And she did it. She's like, I have to admit, I didn't really know what to expect until I actually went there with you. And she's like, wow, this hospital's so modern. Your doctor speaks great English, like all of these things that, even though she supported my decision, she was like, is it really going to be safe? Is it really going to be good? Whatever. And, there are lots of, what's the word?
Misconceptions?
Yes, but also a lot of variations, obviously. Like there's
a lot of variety.
Public medical system, that has a very different, it's a very different scenario, obviously, than going to a private hospital. But I think, there's some people are aware of it, I guess, because of like medical tourism, and people actually going somewhere to seek out more affordable care. But I just wanted to touch on that and just, highlight that. I mean, obviously I don't have anything to compare it to. This is the only time I've
ever had a baby.
But it was, I had a great experience. And I actually think it probably, based on a lot of things I heard, I think it was better than it would have been in the US.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of it, like, all this stuff about how if you're over 35, you're, geriatric pregnancy and all of this stuff. My doctor was not at all. That's what they call it. That's actually like the medical term. But for me to be pregnant with twins in my early 40s, my doctor was not freaked out about that. She was like, you're fine. You're not high risk. You're not, she's like, everything looks great. You're going to be fine. Instead of like all the, alarms going off about like, whoa, this looks like a really sketchy situation. We need to be very careful here and, really intervene in all of these ways that my doctor didn't feel was necessary. And so it really went really well.
And you as a pregnant person, what a nice assurance to have, everything's going to be okay, and that I'm not being marginalized because of my age or your geriatric pregnancy. This is the first time I've ever heard that term.
Yeah, I know.
How nice to just have that, and just I guess the word here, and I know you'll understand, is you feel contained. Okay, contenida. That's a word that we don't use a whole lot in English, but it kind of means that they kind of, help me out here, they kind of pamper you and make you feel that security. Consentida. Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Sort of, but contained is what I mean. Contenida, which means
I haven't heard that.
They just kind of calm you down and say everything's going to be same. Whereas consentida is maybe you're more on the spoiled and pampered side. It's a little bit different. Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, I also had both experiences in Argentina. I gave birth. I got pregnant so fast after I got married. We had no choice. We couldn't be covered by insurance and couldn't afford it at that time. We were dirt poor. So I had my first son in a public hospital. That's a whole nother story in itself. And then the second one 10 years later with private healthcare, and it was excellent. It was excellent. So yeah, you may be pleasantly surprised that the US isn't always the best country. I hate to say it. I hate to burst your bubble. So sorry. But there is a reason why we feel so good in these countries. You know, we really, I personally feel like I don't lack anything. If anything, I've been added to, have added value from living in another country. I feel like my life upgraded when I moved to Argentina, and it definitely upgraded when we moved to Mexico.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, do you have time to do any hobbies? Do you have anything going on personally?
Yeah.
Outside of family?
I would say most of my hobbies are pretty portable.
Portable.
You know, so I read a lot. I've always read a lot, which means my Kindle is like the best thing ever. I love being able to access books, you know, from anywhere, which is great. So yeah, I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I have, I think probably the main thing that I do that's less like nomadic is I knit and crochet. It's not easy to travel with lots of yarn, so it works better when I'm staying in one place for a while. So yeah, and actually that's something that has helped me connect with people too. When I think it was when we were first kind of starting to spend more time in San Miguel de Allende, I was trying to find places to buy yarn actually. And one time I was walking through this courtyard and there was a group of women sitting around a table and there was this mound of yarn on the table. And I was like, sorry, where did you get that? Like,
where'd you get that
get some of that
big ball of yarn?
Yeah. And I found out that it was, well, they told me at one of the tianguis markets there, but then they also told me that they had this group, like they met every week and they were crocheting blankets for people who, there's an organization, it's not Habitat for Humanity, but same kind of idea, like they build houses for people who need them in the area. And then these women were crocheting blankets to give to these people who are moving into these new houses. And I was like, oh, well, I knit. I don't know how to crochet. And they were like, well, we'll teach you. Sit down. And so I ended up, you know, connecting with this group of women, learned how to crochet because of them, contributed to a bunch of their blankets. And that was really fun. And now, obviously, I have a new skill that I can take with me. So that's nice.
Now, was this a mostly Mexican group of women that invited you to join them?
No, they were gringas.
They were gringas. Okay, so expat women. Okay.
Yeah.
Foreigner women. And so you made friends from that too.
Yep.
Nice. What I found, just a last observation here, one thing I love about the culture here is you'll be like, I don't know if this happened to you, but I've shared this experience with so many people where you're sitting in a restaurant, maybe you're having lunch with a girlfriend, and all of a sudden they're eavesdropping on you or something, or they recognize you from someplace and they say, hey, I recognize you from church or whatever. And then all of a sudden that table becomes 4. And then you all just kind of, this has happened to us. Nowhere in the world have I ever had that experience. Certainly not in Argentina, even less in the US, where all of a sudden, oh, come join us, or why don't you come on over? Just if you don't, of course, the pandemic, there's a before and after the pandemic, okay?
For sure.
When we used to go out to lunch and, you know, we used to have maybe fewer commitments as far as that goes, and we're not stuck at home. But when you go out here, I find that it's almost impossible not to make friends everywhere you go. That's what I found. I don't know if your experience has been the same, but if you go out with your kids, it's a real kid-friendly country. And people, and that is a magnet in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we're stuck here. Hold on, just hang out here. It froze for just a second here.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's been really nice getting to, you know, talk to people because of the kids, and of course, twins always catch people's attention. They look nothing alike, but they're like, wait, they look very similar in age. Like, what's going on here, you know? And then, yeah, I really appreciate just, yeah, like at restaurants, people are just so friendly and happy to have the kids there. And like, I
Yeah.
never feel like, you know, the kids are, I mean, they're actually very good at restaurants anyway, but like, I never feel like they're being inappropriate or they're unwelcome or people are, you know, intolerant of kids being around. So that's really nice.
Yes. So that must feel good, you know, having twins, you know,
Yeah.
in that way that they're welcome. They're like, oh no, kids are coming in the restaurant. Better get out of here.
Yeah.
Well, very good. This has been really interesting. Anything else you'd like to include? Like, would you like to be contacted? And if so, how?
Yeah, the best way to reach out to me is just through my website, nomadtopia.com. There's a contact form there, but then also links to my social media and everything else. So yeah.
Awesome. Hold that thought for just a second here as my dog's going crazy in the background. I should have locked him up before we started this. For those of you who are watching this interview, thank you for joining us. We'd love to have your comments, feedback, suggestions, whatever for this channel. And don't forget to subscribe, as we feature a lot of interesting perspectives in these podcast interviews that are both in English and Spanish. So we're building a community, and your feedback and participation is very important to us. Amy Scott, thank you so much for coming on today. You've given a lot of interesting perspectives that I think people are going to really enjoy and learn from.
Yeah, it was great talking with you.
And I want to wish you a very happy new year. May this be a better year for all of us in this entire world. A safe year, a prosperous, happy new year. Así que le voy a decir en español, feliz año nuevo.
Feliz año.
Feliz año. Thank you very much, and God bless. We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.